How's it going? Welcome back. All right, so the last video I did, I made bowls off the hump. So right now, I'm going to show you how I finish these bowls up, trim the bottoms. So when you trim the bottom of a pot, you have a lot of clay at the bottom, so it's good to trim a nice little foot ring on here. Notice the S crack that we talked about in the last video. All right, so trimming definitely helps like prevent these, but it still can happen. So this one, who knows how it could have dried too fast, or just not, I didn't compress it enough. So there's a lot of reasons. But so anyway, this gives the bowl a little more definition, right? It gives it a nice foot, and the whole surface does not sit on a table. So there's just a ring, so it's a foot ring. All right, so these bowls I've gotten to a little bit drier, right? So now they're not wet, so I can pick them up and they don't bend too much. If you still put pressure on them, they're gonna move. It may still be a little bit wet, but I've got a solution for that too. Okay, so this is what's called leather hard. Leather hard is a stage in the greenware process of clay. So greenware is any clay that's not fired. Okay, so there are 3 different levels. One is wet clay, which you make the pots with. 2 is leather hard, so you can work with it. You can still attach things together, and you can trim them. You can add handles. You can do all kinds of things at leather hard. Leather hard is like the ideal time to work on things, that when it needs to be a little drier than wet. Okay, and then the last part is bone dry. And bone dry, if you touch it the wrong way, it can break. Okay, so that's for greenware. And then you move on to bisqueware, which is fired once in the kiln without any glaze. So and then it's ready to accept glaze. And then there's glazeware or stoneware, because that's what we deal with. All right, so this one's ready to go. So I'm gonna work on doing a foot ring. So the first thing you have to do, you have to recenter this on the wheel. So I have this bat on my wheel and it has little circles on it. That helps me recenter the pot pretty quickly. I can just kind of match it up with the circle and see if it's centered. That was probably too easy. So some of you will sit down, if your pot's a little off center, it'll start messing up and looking off center, right? So you want the center of the pot to be over the center of the wheel. So I put my finger in the center and look at it, and everything looks even. Another way you can check it is by taking a pen tool and draw a couple of lines. This is also a good way to kind of determine how far you want to cut for your foot ring. If those lines stay parallel, then and there's not one side that's too big and one side too thin, then you should be pretty well centered. It's not really necessarily about the outside of the clay, it's about the center of the pot over the center of the wheel. All right, so now I've got this centered, recentered anyway, and I want to keep it on the wheel. So it's not wet, so it doesn't stick on the wheel head. So I need to take some clay, just roll out a couple of quick coils. We got 2 about the same size. I'm going to lay one down beside the pot on that side, and I'm going to lay like this. I'm going to lay that one down like that. All right, now I haven't pushed yet. So now I'm going to take my left and my right hand, and I'm going to push together down towards the wheel head, not towards the pot. Do it at the same time so you don't knock it off center. All right? And just to be safe, drop a couple more on the opposite sides. So now that pot will stay in there pretty well. So now it's time to trim it. So to trim it, there's a lot of varieties of trimming tools that you can use. I use a bigger one because I want to take more clay away faster. I just reshaped this a little bit so I use this part more than I use this part. All right, so I always work on the right side. Again, the clay's going this way, so I want to work here. This edge is what cuts. So if I turn that a certain way, it's going to gouge the clay. So I want to be able to just take clay away. So I just angle it, and if I hold it straight up and down, it's going to cut straight. If I do it like this, it's going to cut whatever shape, whatever angle I have on here. So you can control what this looks like. You can move it around and change what the foot ring looks like. Right now I'm thinking about just taking mass off. always start on the outside. People have different taste of what a foot ring looks like, because it can really add a lot to a pot, or it can just be something you don't really notice. I like to leave mine a little thicker. I want it to be kind of like a pedestal almost for certain pots. I just take a little bit. You see it, this is pretty good. The dryness of this is doing what it's supposed to do. It comes off in ribbons. If it's gunking up your tool too much, then it's too wet. I usually work at a pretty fast speed with the wheel in order to get this where I want it. It's starting to get a little softer. Also, I can look at how the contour of the bowl leads into the foot ring. Alright, so I have the outside pretty much the way I want it. It's gotten a little smaller, it's a little neater. So now I'm going to go to the inside. And I only work from the center. It's just like when I'm making a pot. I do a lot of stuff at just almost 3 o'clock on the watch face, right? So you have 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I want to work at 3 or a little after. I'm going to angle this down. I'm just taking the tip of this trimming tool and pushing it down towards the pot itself. It's also a good idea to know how thick the bottom is, so you don't trim through it. This is a little soft on the inside there. So if it is a little soft and I want to get finished, I can get out the torch. It doesn't take very much to get it where I need it to be. So I can put it, when it's a little drier, I can put a little more pressure on. Alright, so this is a good lesson. This is a little thin. So you have to be careful. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on it. So you want to make sure that that part right there, the center part, isn't higher than the outside of your foot ring. So you can take something that's straight and lay it across. As long as it doesn't touch, which we're good, that's all you need to do. So I'm going to take this, smooth some of this stuff out. So now, because I've trimmed it, it's a good time. All I have to do is smooth it out like that. And you never have to sand it or anything, and there's not a lot of mess when it's really dry. You can also take a wooden tool and really kind of flatten some stuff out. So for a bowl, when I trim, I want to trim with the curve of the inside. I want the inside and outside to mirror each other, and it look like you just put a ring down on top of it. So for a cylinder, I don't need that because it's flat. So I want to trim the bottom flat, and then you can have a foot ring on it, and inside the foot ring is flat because the inside of a cylinder should be like a little box, 90-degree angle. So that one's smooth, ready to go. Let's try it one more time. I take the clay off the outside just like I put it on there, one at a time or two at a time. Now I want to look at, I'm picking it up carefully because I don't want to mess up what I've just done. And look at the rim and make sure that it didn't get distorted. Clean it up a little bit. So now the inside and the outside of that are pretty much a mirror of each other with a little foot ring on the bottom. So all I need to do now is write my name on it, let it dry, and fire it. All right, let's do one more. Okay, time to recenter. So if it didn't have those rings, it wouldn't be that big a deal. I just kind of put it in the center. But even if you don't use a bat with rings, there are rings on wheel heads. This one, the bottom is a little off from the top, so I just had to make sure that I get it in place. I can tap it in there a little bit, and that's perfect. Take my 2 pieces of clay, push straight down. You definitely don't want to trim when the pots are too dry, but in the same token there, you don't want to do it too wet either. Both make it a lot harder. So you want to be patient and really take care of how you dry your pots. So this one's kind of squared off for the way I picked it up. So I want to take it kind of slow and take some of that roughness out because I want it to be round. Sometimes when you throw things off the hump, the bottom is really unlevel, so you also can kind of level it off. I think this one's not too bad. I can take a little bit off, but I don't want to take too much off the bottom because I need to get in there and trim out the foot ring. So I kind of like this outside shape here. Let the bowl match up with it. This one's a little drier than the last one, so it should be nicer to trim. Don't have to use the torch. Now it's wet. Take my fingers, smooth out the rough edges here. So I don't want to leave anything that I don't want later. I want to take care of it all now, so I don't have to work with it before I bisque fire. terms of like smoothness, rough things. You really don't want to sand a lot of pots. I know with you guys, you have to sand a lot because there's just so much stuff and it gets dry fast. So when I sign my pots, you could use a dull pencil to do it. I know you guys use pen tools and I tell you not to, but you do it anyway. I just have like a dull pencil. This is an old wooden pen tool that I just shaved down and made it nice and dull. This is the best way to sign pots. Now it's hard to get my whole name in the bottom of it. Alright, so there's another one done. Has my name. You probably can't read that, but so let's try this one. Now, this one is pretty thin. So I'm going to show you what happens when you trim through the bottom. Although I like the bowl, but it's good to see mistakes too. There's actually more clay there than I thought. Maybe I'll just keep it. So I just keep moving the trimming tool around the foot ring to get it the shape that I want. And I'm also looking at the inside of the foot ring and the outside of the foot ring. So if this is not low enough to match up with that, I've got to keep going a little more. Because it just looks a lot better if you do. Almost got it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll keep it. That's probably the best one out of the three. All right. So this one is a little wet, and I just dropped it, so it's misshapen. I just want to show you how it looks when you actually start to trim through the bottom. So I'm not even going to worry about the outside. See how it's wet and it's gunking up the trimming tool? There we go. So now it doesn't have a bottom. Not very useful as a bowl. You see. All right. That's it for trimming. I'll see you later.